Thank you very much for having me, and now buckle up. The reason why is, as Dr. Sorrell so nicely said, why don't we just be nice to each other, right? Unfortunately, I got job security for days because, right? Let that joke sit in. Okay, good. So here is my challenge to you, okay? I'm gonna do two things at once today. There are people and topics that you are totally comfortable navigating that difference, yes? And then there's the others. So what I want you to do is I want you to conjure up in your mind. You don't have to share it out loud because some of you sitting next to them, but I want you to think about who the people are or who the topics are where you decide, I don't wanna. So a lot of times in DEI work, we start talking about unconscious bias. My job is to help you become more conscious of what you are currently unconscious of. You are not going to enjoy this, but you are gonna laugh, okay? So that's the exchange. While you're thinking about who and what frustrates you, because some of y'all are editing your list, again, you don't have to share it with anybody. Home audience, this applies to you too. I also want to give you the ability to text message me anything, anywhere, anytime. My job is to dismantle the systems we are currently used to. And so one of those systems is that you have to conjure up the question to ask me before I get on a plane. That's stupid. I'm thought-provoking. You're gonna have questions. So feel free to text message me. Save this number in your phone as whatever you want. Take a good picture. Put the chin filter in, only one chin, that's important. I guess, as Dr. Sorrell said, I'm also abnormally sized. Thank you very much. Skinny people couldn't pull off this skirt. Anyway. The texting number is 202-670-4262. Now, my job is to be thought-provoking. So tonight when you're making dinner, next week, next month, 4 years from now, you're gonna be like, that lady in the skirt. So save me as the lady in the skirt, okay? But I want you to be able to text message me in real time. So we are gonna do an interactive breakout after this, so I'm gonna set everybody up for that, and then I'm gonna go to some conference room someplace else, and I'm gonna do the same breakout, so don't get any FOMO, with the virtual audience that y'all are doing in person, and then I'm gonna come back and wrap it all up together. So if you're using the chat, if you would like to text message, whatever you need, I have unmedicated ADHD, so just send it my way. I got it. Here's 2 rules about the texting. Number 1, you're at work. So if you want to text me something that you do not want me to read aloud while I am here where you're at work, put DR at the beginning. It means don't read. I will read, but I will not read it aloud, I promise. Do not put DR at the end. Okay, fair game. DR. The other thing is that I am a professional comedian that had a headgear for 24-hour headgear for 9 years. So I am very sarcastic. So if you dish it, you better be able to take it. That's what I gotta say. Those are the rules about the texting. But you can use this number anytime you want. When it has to do with family, when it has to do with work, coworkers, strangers, politics, whatever. I want you to have access when you need access, because that's what dismantling systems of familiarity means. So the number again is 202-670-4262. Now, while y'all are thinking, what is she doing? How's she doing this? It's a Google Voice number. I have unlimited data. Y'all chill out, okay? The truth is, I don't get that many texts, because people are taking care of me and/or they're scared to ask. Now, please see preceding keynoter. How are you supposed to be curious and compassionate and hold all these niceties in the space if you're too scared to even ask? It's free. Just ask. Hopefully by now you have thought of a somebody or a topic. So what I'm going to do is on your tables is this flow chart. Those of you online, I think we're about to get a PDF that you can download into the chat. That's a cue. So let me explain what this is. Some of y'all very heady people, that'll make sense in a second because you're like, ooh, worksheets. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to think about, when do you choose not to do this? Now, I don't use the word nice largely because I'm a white woman from Texas and that ended me up in junior league and cotillion. So we don't go there very often. I use the language better connection. There are times where you don't wanna, right? It's not just me. There are times where you know you don't wanna, but you're not allowed to tell anybody you don't wanna, so you're fake wanting to. There are also times where you totally wanna. To become conscious of what you are currently unconscious of, you are responsible. I am responsible for that delineation. Now, a show of hands, and virtually I want you to just put a 7 randomly into the chat if this applies to you. If you have ever engaged in a challenging conversation, okay? Now keep them up. That conversation goes AWOL, and you're still hanging in it. You are now on the edge of a conversation, and you don't know where it's going, but you care about the outcome, so you're hanging in it. Yes? Okay, hands down, 7's gone. Here's what's fascinating to me. I am not going to teach you any single skill that you're not starting with. But you're in charge of figuring out when you decide you don't want to anymore. So what I'm going to invoke in you are 2 different kind of systems to think about. And this may be the most controversial thing I say today. I'm going to use a driving metaphor. So I say that because I live in California where we believe in turn signals. I know, half of the state now lives here in Dallas, so I'm starting to see more turn signal usage. I want you to think about the conversations that you have done prep work for and the conversations you've done no prep work for. Okay, ready? I want you to think about your draft emails. Now, this is like Beetlejuice. If I say it 3 times, they still don't send. But some of y'all got some emails in that draft folder, and you haven't sent it because you haven't figured out how to win. I don't care, at least for this moment, what your title is. I want you to just be a person that I am likely to bump into. Because when we actually start talking about the skills that you already have, you're using them with strangers in the grocery store. You don't clock out of using these skills. But sometimes you don't want to. So I want you to go into yourself and think about, when do you want to and when do you not want to, and why. There's no judgment here. I mean, there'll be judgment later, I'm sure, but there's no judgment here, but you're in charge, okay? Why this is so critical is that you just typed a 7 or raised your hand, that you have been in challenging conversations where you've had to deliver bad news or something hard is happening and it goes AWOL and you're still in it to win it. But that's a different kind of winning that's preventing you from sending that email. I'm going to invite us to do some self-reflective work about what would happen if we didn't have to be right. What would happen if we weren't searching to win? Now, the inverse of this, and this is where I'm going to get some of y'all, is what if it's not about making them wrong? Or more importantly, making them lose? That's what a better connection is. I wouldn't have job security if we could just communicate and connect with each other. But again, thank you. I have a mortgage and 3 rescues with sensitive stomachs. So here I am. Now, as I walk through this, I want you to keep in mind where you are a hard no. You don't need to write anything down. You don't need to share it. You're not going to turn anything in. But I want you to pay attention to like, oh, that's where I do it. And you'll know you're getting close to that because what will happen is you'll start talking about somebody else. You'll be like, yep, that's what Jeff does. Yeah, Todd. Is Todd in this room? He needs this. I would like for you to notice that you are somebody's Jeff and Todd. They are very excited that you are here today. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is to practice this flow chart without witness, without accountability. Do not practice this with your coworkers or somebody else who's here today or your best friend because they're going to lie to you and tell them you're nailing it. This is hard. I wrote a book about it and it's still hard for me. I want you to practice with people you are likely never going to see again. Because you're going to get embarrassed because you're going to screw it up and you're going to feel like you failed or didn't do it right, whatever that means, which is literally how I have job security. Those feelings come up and you stop doing stuff. Please keep that up. Because it's more realistic than me saying, here's your answer. I would rather have to go get a real job. I mean, I'm feral and unemployable, so this is a bridge we'd have to discuss, but I have a therapist. So what I want you to do is to practice with an Uber driver or a barista or somebody you're likely to not see again. They don't need to know that you're doing it. You don't give them a handout. That's just weird, okay? But I want you to pay attention, okay? You're working up to the person or the topic that you thought about. I like to give people kind of a spectrum, right? Like I can't pick my best friend because they're just going to say I'm doing good. But you also don't need to pick something that's unlikely to occur. That's why you're sticking to Uber drivers and baristas. So for example, Dick Cheney. I am unlikely to be alone with Dick. There's actually probably a list that does not allow me to be alone with Dick Cheney. So if I start in my head working through this as if that's going to happen, I'm cheating myself the actual practice because that's unlikely to occur. So with someone that you're likely to not see again, but you will actually see, step 1 is that you're going to try and make a better connection with them. Now, some of us quantify this into making them laugh or making them smile, but your goal is just to make a better connection, not to be right, not to win, not to make them lose, not to make them wrong, just a better connection. This feels like elevating humanity. And you actually know this feeling, but that's how you're going to enter this conversation. Some of you are already at a hard pass. So maybe not today, right? Maybe try it later, have another cup of coffee or something. But when you practice, that's step 1. And I want you to pay attention to whatever comes up for you when you're like, not today. What the intentional conversation means, step 2, is that you have to know when you get to quit. So have any of you ever had a personal trainer? Right. Believe it or not, I was raised by professional athletes and have had a lot of professional trainers, and they usually quit me, which I consider the goal. The reason why you need an out time is that when you are doing something with a personal trainer, you can watch the clock, which does somehow slow down when you are doing some kind of workout activity, but you know when your session is up. So you can take as much time as you need to reorganizing those dumbbells and waste time because you know when your appointment is over, right? You need an exit strategy. The intentional conversation is identifying the framework and the time of when you get to stop elevating humanity. So let's say you're going to use a barista. You have between the order and the beverage getting in your hand. Now you've provided yourself a structure. You can do that, right? No, you won't, but still. Once you have the intentional conversations, a phone call, is this an email, is this in the time it takes to order something, that's when you know you get to stop being nice. But because you're conscious of when you get to stop being nice, spoiler alert, sometimes it spills over. You're still nice to people in the coffee shop and you haven't left the coffee shop. So then maybe the next time you practice, it's between the order, the beverage in your hand, and leaving the building. Right? Don't tell anyone, but it's contagious, actually being conscious of your own behaviors. Notice you haven't said anything yet. Flaming extroverts, we usually walk our way through all of this, which is why we are trailed behind people cleaning up our mess constantly, because we think outside of our heads. And P.S., if any of you are not married yet, evidently part of marriage is marrying a court transcriber. So as a flaming extrovert, I am often quoted back to myself, where I obviously disagree with whatever that information came from. So step 3 can mean and show up differently. But step 3 is going to be listening to them as if they know something. If Jeff or Todd just popped up in your head, practice that. Most of us have a story about the people we don't want to talk to, and it certainly isn't that they are wise. We give up before we even get there. I guarantee you, if any of y'all are texting me right now, it's like, have you met Barbara in accounting? We're not sure how she got there, right? But that's a story that you have about that person. We're not doing our stories, we're trying something different, right? Remember, we're elevating humanity. You don't have to start with Barb in accounting, but notice you might want to add her to a list that you're going to eventually benefit from. We're going to start with people we don't know. Listening to people as if they're wise means they know something you don't. It don't have to be the thing you do know. Right? A lot of times in DEI work, we talk about extending grace. Have you heard this? Yeah. This is a sexy non-answer. What do I do about Barb in accounting? Oh, extend her grace. Oh, okay. That was not helpful. Get her an intern named Grace, I guess, right? When you are extending grace, I'm going to give you a line that'll slow your roll down, but it'll also trigger the voices inside your head again. Y'all are familiar with the voices in your head? If any of you just said, I don't know what she's talking about, I don't have voices in my head, you didn't say that out loud, so welcome. Here's how you extend grace if you're having some difficulty. Their life taught them to show up this way. What sucks about that truth is your life taught you to show up the way you are choosing to show up. But notice that little split second, it's like a little spark. All of a sudden, there's like a half a beat of a difference. You'll fill it, backfill it, whatever with your own story, but their life taught them to show up this way. My life taught me to show up this way, and I'm responsible for every truth and mistake and part I like and part I don't like about that. Our lives teach us how to be. Of course they know something, because they know what level of code shifting they're doing at work. They know what's going on at home. They know what they're leaving in the parking lot. They know what they're really texting when they tell you they're doing something internal or something that's relevant to the meeting. They know what's going on with them, just like you know what's actually going on with you. True? One of the funniest things about being 19 years sober is that most alcoholics are identified as alcoholics before they identify themselves as alcoholics. Because other people know what's going on. Other people know, girl, you're about to get divorced. They're figuring out in the break room how to tell you. Can you listen to people as if they might know something about their own life that you don't know? Now again, extroverts, we listen, I'm using air quotes, we listen like dolphins. We send out information like sonar and wait for it to come back. That's what I mean by listening, right? You introverts just go Depeche Mode and enjoy the silence while you're physically listening. Hearing is different. That's advanced class. But once you can listen as if they know something, you already know when you get to stop interacting with them, and you know that your goal is to elevate humanity. This is a very different kind of conversation, yes? If we go back to the barista, I have a sense of humor, hopefully you've noticed. And if I want to play with the barista, and it is the wrong shift to do that, if I didn't listen first, I might actually get somebody in trouble. Or I might think they're awful and not tip them as well because I didn't listen in the first place to what's going on over there. Sometimes it's a metaphor for listening, of paying attention. Now, conveniently in DEI work, we're often told never, ever, 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 ever make judgments and assumptions. Have y'all heard this? A little spelling pop quiz. What happens when we assume? Is the dumbest white people advice I've ever heard in my life. Because we spend, and specifically white women, you know we all went to white woman school. In white woman school, we're told never, ever, 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 ever make judgments and assumptions. And it might be present in curriculum at other kinds of schools. I just went to white woman school. Never, ever, 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 ever make judgments and assumptions, so we can get all wrapped around the axle of catching ourselves making judgments and assumptions so that it looks like we're busy doing the work. When in reality, can you just embrace that you do? We make judgments and assumptions so we can feel safe and so that we can feel prepared. And that is how our life has taught us how to be. When we say, like, just go be nice to people, that's part of the reason we can't, is some people are not worthy of our nice. They might be, but they're not going to get it from us because we preceded them with a judgment or a story or an assumption that does not qualify them for our nice. Can we be responsible for that? We make judgments and assumptions because we need to. In DEI work, oftentimes it's very easy to talk about like community and how important employee resource groups are, but we rarely talk about that the identity work that you are doing to survive, to live, to be granted legal humanity is very different than the DEI work from your dominant places. Everyone in this room, to my knowledge, unless you got an email, has a job. I'm guessing most of you have gotten at least good at faking being literate. This is controversial for Texas, but some of y'all have figured out how to make ice. I say that because that's an Aggie joke back in the Longhorn house. I grew up in a mixed family, an Aggie and a Longhorn. That's why I went to college out of state. If you can pay attention to what shows up for you and you haven't even released it yet, then you can edit it. You can understand the patterns of your judgments and assumptions and why those patterns make you feel safe and do I still need them? You can keep what you need to keep about yourself. You can edit what you need to edit. And some stuff, it's just contradictory. Okay, well, at least you know it about yourself. I identify as a pacifist. I grew up in Texas, which means I cuss like a sailor, and it's my grandma that taught me. It wasn't until I fled Plano that I found out cussing wasn't considered proper for a lady. First off, why are you assuming I'm putting in an application to be a lady? If you can control your judgments and assumptions about other people, you'll actually build the muscle of controlling what you need to feel safe and prepared. Sometimes we don't need what we think we need. Other times we do because it's actually how we're staying alive. DEI work is very complicated personal work. We all have a lot of identities, a lot of lived experiences that are happening at the exact same time. And we are picking and choosing what to tell other people about. And none of that matters because we are also perceiving what we want to perceive about other people. Listen to others as if they're wise. Most of y'all are getting off the on-ramp right there. But notice, that's where you get off the off-ramp. That's your responsibility. You don't want to. Okay, now you know. That's what being conscious of unconscious behavior means. So let's pretend you're still going along the flow chart, or it's months from now, and you've actually built up those muscles and you've moved to kind of this, what I call the second part. This middle section, forming the message and understanding your intended meaning of said message, they come together. I like to refer to it as the Swiss roll. Now, this may be a Gen X reference. Some of y'all are going to have to Google this. I do not advise eating it. But a Swiss roll is an obesity starter pack. As a latchkey kid, surprise, I'm a bitter Gen Xer, but as a latchkey kid, this was called 335. It is, for those of you that are interested, this is hard to do, but cake that has been smushed flat, smeared with expired caulking, rolled tightly and dipped in leftover candle wax, which is why you only eat them frozen. Do not eat them at room temperature. Hardcore advice right there. Now, the reason why this is important is that some of us are Olympic qualified athletes at forming a message, i.e. see the draft emails. You're very good at wordsmithing what it is you want to say. Most of us are terrible at understanding what we mean. Part of the reason you haven't sent those things is you don't know if it's going to win because you don't even really know what you mean because you're just trying to make them lose. So this is how you can know that you do or you don't know what it means. If you have ever had anything said to you and your response was, I don't know how you spell that, but it's like a turkey gobble with gum in their mouth, okay? Well, I didn't mean that. What ends up happening is you have been given some feedback about something you have chosen to do or say that you absolutely did not mean, probably didn't even consciously think about it. You don't know what you actually meant, but you know it wasn't that. So then you go, I am not the only person who's done that, but that's how you know you didn't know what you meant. The other thing is when you replay a transcript. I am not the only person who does this, but you lost a fight. You didn't even know it was a fight until you found out you lost. And then you memorize the transcript and you change your lines and eviscerate the other person better and better and better every time you do this. For me, this shows up between the first and the second conditioning cycle in the showers, right? So this is dangerous because I'm in Texas. Do not dox this guy. I've already talked to him. I saw him at the high school reunion. But Brian Baxter. I know. Brian Baxter had the audacity to break up with me. You should be gasping. Brian Baxter had the audacity to break up with me in front of science class. Publicly. Y'all are doing much better at this game. Good job. But here is why the transcript is frozen in my mind. It's not how he broke up with me. It's that I didn't know we were dating. Now, for those of you playing the home game, just so you know, this characteristic has followed through in all of my relationships. You really have to bop me with a 2x4 because I am generally clueless. That's when I didn't know what I meant because I didn't even know it was happening. That's how unconscious feels. Can we get more conscious before we release the Kraken? Some of y'all are, yeah, I heard yes, but let's be honest, some of y'all are like, no. I'm going to go with Negator Skeletor on that one, Jess. So pick a different stranger. Notice you could with this stranger, but not with this stranger. You could with this person you know, but you can't with this person. That's becoming conscious of what you're unconscious of, and the goal here is to elevate humanity. Now let's pretend you've Swiss rolled something and it is ready for release. It is then when you release the Kraken. You can only do this when you are 100% responsible for it. Now, some of y'all are in marriage therapy. You don't have to raise your hands. And marriage therapists will tell you that you are only 50% responsible. Yeah, you know what? They need job security. They're going to tell everybody they're 50% responsible, unless it's like a poly therapist, then it's like 33%, right? What I'm going to ask you is when you are practicing is to be 100% responsible for whatever it is that happens. So when you do release it, what happens is that no matter what occurs next, you can be responsible for it. Now again, y'all are at, hard no. Okay, but now you know when you're getting on the off-ramp. Do you see how it means, like to just feel conscious of when you're like, no, not interested in that. Okay, well then don't say it yet. Don't do it yet. Don't email it. Don't say it yet. You're not ready to say it yet. You are practicing what it would feel like. Sometimes this is the entry point of practice. And I want you to think, I am not a parent. You are welcome. But some of y'all bred. So I want you to think about the most authentic, real conversation you have had with your kid lately. Okay? Some of y'all are like, nope. Okay. But chances are, as a kidless person, I think it's important to mention that all my parenting friends come to me for advice, but I'm not allowed to give advice, so I have to, whatever. Chances are the last authentic conversation you had with your kid or somebody you feel responsible for was when you told them you didn't know something. Why do you have to get to that point in order to actually be that real? You know a lot of stuff. They know a lot of stuff. If you can claim whatever it is that happens, you can make a meaning about the connection. And when you make a meaning about the connection, that's what inspires you to try again. Because then you know what the impact of the conversation is. Does that make sense? Now, what I do think is critically important is that we show up in this manner very differently. So I created a model to help people through this. Because when you say no, there's a reason, there's a pattern to people who say no, including me. There's a reason I off-ramp. And in my research, what I realized is there's a reason I also on-ramp. And so if you need to, think about people that you supervise, your own children, whatever you need to do, but I want you to flip the power dynamic for a little bit. And I want you to think about the people that you are a no or a topics that you're uncomfortable with, whatever those things are. I want you to know that there is a distinct pattern as to why we get off and why we get back on to this flowchart. This model is based on head, heart, and action. This is not rocket science. Head, heart, and action. What I want to do is I want to tell you a little bit about each variable, and then I'm going to contradict myself because we have all three variables in us at all times, but that is too much to talk about in 20 minutes. So you're just going to pick one. Somebody's an overachiever. You're going to pick two. That's fine. Okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to think inside your head. Y'all are at work. Some of y'all are in conference rooms next to people. I see you. I don't want you to necessarily point fingers, but I want you to think of people. Because if you can personalize these 3 variables with someone in your life, it'll help you understand the activity. So first off, we have heady people. Heady does not mean smart. Pressure off. Heady means detail-oriented. So for me, I'm a very heady person. So what this might mean is that when I'm in a meeting, which I scheduled and set the agenda up, and you got on my doodle calendar and I reserved the room, when we are in a meeting, somebody's going to have some fantastic, wild, flanged, glittery butterfly idea because they went to a conference. And my response is going to be, in the bylaws, Article 4, number 2A, that's not how outlining works. That is a heady detail. This is what our budget is. This is what our timeline is. I don't know if that's possible. We tried that in 1974. How this person may also show up is if you, which I am about to say something that may have a religious impact on people, if you would just let me do this by myself, please do not make me work in a group. I will get it done faster, ahead of deadline, under budget. Just don't make me play with others, please. I know, community, we're all one family, but just not today. Can I just do this? Okay, now can you identify the heady parts of yourself or other people you work with? Good job. Heady people are annoying. We are frustrating. We also are very, very capable of doing good work. That is true. Now, some of y'all doing a little praise language, so I'm going to move on to heart people. This does not mean emotionally available. According to my therapist, that's a logical response. I'm still working on that. Hearty is your glitter butterfly idea people. You are the people attending this summit right now, and there are your coworkers are dreading what you're going to come back with. Because you know you came up with a new idea. That idea contradicts the last new idea that they haven't even finished implementing yet. You get 40% off those t-shirts, you're going to buy them for everybody. Hearty people, you tend to show up with the idea. I do a lot of workplace culture kind of work, and this is where we talk about the family. Bob talked about the people, etc. Some of y'all were like, I don't know about all the people. But you can't say that out loud because you're wearing a shirt that says every single one of us. What it doesn't say is every single one of the people I define as us. Right? Hearty people, you got big ideas, and everybody hates you for it. But here's what's different. The hearty people, you are dependent on other people. You are the ones that send out thank you cards and pass out gift cards and little foam crowns for everybody and celebrate their birthdays and do door decks if you are lucky enough to have a door, right? Like, you're spending a lot of money at Oriental Trading Company to say thank you. Heady people do not need others. Hearty people need others because they don't understand how they got here. Healthy dose of imposter syndrome. They are dependent on the people to do whatever idea spilled out of their face. It's not going to be them. They're busy building up the next idea already. Then you have the action people. Y'all are the ones that we are impressed you are still in the room. We screw with these people by making them attend meetings about what we're gonna do. Action people usually drive a pickup truck and have ladders of multiple lengths. They are not interested in what color of purple. They just want to know where to put the napkins. Do you know these people? Now, what's fascinating is Barb in accounting, she's got a Rolodex, old school cards. That's why the little contact thing looks the way it does. You're welcome. Barb in accounting, she's got a Rolodex of action-oriented people because Barb could actually get a copy machine fixed after hours on a federal holiday because she knows somebody. Right? Chuck and Todd, I'm not saying they're not annoying, but they also can get some stuff done. Chuck, with his charming personality, he's going to go find Jeff together. They're going to problem solve some difficult thing that's happening. Chairs are going to be in a circle. There is guaranteed to be food, flip chart paper, 47 colors of markers, some office supplies, and some extra glitter. They're going to work it out. It's going to be fine. Todd knows every word of every meeting minute that has ever existed. And as much as you hate him, there are times where you're like, Todd, how do I fill out this expense report? And Todd has the software to record some video walking you through the whole process. And this is the worst part of Todd, is that you have to actually, under your breath, go, thank you, Todd. I need my $17.83 for gas back. We are capable of doing great work while also being very annoying. Can we embrace that? Because if we can start to embrace that, then what happens is you realize you are somebody's annoying. Most DEI work is trying to teach you how to be less annoyed by other people. Again, thank you for the mortgage payment. What I'm going to invite you to do is how to take responsibility for you being annoying in ways you're never even going to find out about. Because somebody's so annoyed by you, they ain't even going to tell you what you're doing. Can you just assume that that's happening? The most common question I get from DEI work that I do with all different people in all different industries, all different kind of associations, corporations, etc., the most common question I get is, can you just tell me what I need to do so that I stop offending people? More realistically, they don't even use the word stop. They just say so that they don't offend people. Well, honey child, I do not have a moon ring. So similar to cancel culture or all these other cancellation things that are happening, here is my advice. You cannot cancel-proof yourself. You might get the gift of finding out you've been canceled. What I'm going to invite you to do is to act like it's already happened. To be 100% responsible for who and how you are means that you are going to be 100% responsible for who and how you are based on somebody else and how their life taught them to be. That is what elevating humanity means. Can I do this 100% of the time? No. Have you met people? But can I do the best I can with what I got some of the time? Sure. That's literally my mantra. Being good enough now is to do the best you can with what you got some of the time. I'm going to repeat it because it is a low bar that very few of you will actually get over. Do the best you can with what you got some of the time. Now, I'm going to invoke my social justice heroes. And then we're going to go in to an interactive activity thing, and then we're going to come back and we're going to pull it all together. If you think a little bow is coming, you're wrong. My job is to unbow as much as I can. But my social justice heroes were preventing me from doing the right thing because I put them on pedestals so that I could separate myself from them because I was never as good or as cool or as effective or as powerful as them. I'm just little old me, stupid self. So I challenged myself, and I'm a nerd, and I did a ton of archival research. I did journals, I read letters, I did all kinds of review of information that my social justice heroes wrote about themselves and about how annoying and frustrating the work is, and more importantly, when they began to notice that they were frustrating and annoying to other people. That was like a freedom moment, because I can still do good work and still be annoying. I can choose to be nice. I can choose to have compassion with myself. And then that will enable me to do this work some of the time, occasionally, because that's better than nothing never. Now, in my archival research, I first want to employ Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. shows up all the time in this work. I think it is important to mention for you hardy people out there, Martin Luther King is an excellent example of a heart action person. He literally had a dream, not a plan. He was dependent on people scurrying around him to do something. And when his original work was focusing primarily on black straight Christian men and white straight Christian men being able to sit at the same table, he realized that that was self-serving. That was his agenda. And when he opened his work up to be about a living wage, his heart action self was able to show up with a heady part, tapped into an economic system. His work became significantly more powerful because he was actually addressing people bigger than himself. Martin Luther King was a very frustrating person to work with. You are welcome to read his autobiographies, etc. He is very open about his problems. He was also a raging alcoholic. I'm 19 years sober. I imagine that thank you. I imagine his comeback would have been, I got assassinated. Is it too soon to make Martin Luther King jokes? This is what you're telling me? All right. The reason why I bring him up is because he is the number one reason why I didn't think I was good enough to make a difference in the world. And I found out that we have a lot in common. I'm a little headier than he is, but I'm definitely self-serving. And the vast majority of my entry point into this work was around being a queer person, being a woman person. That was where I entered this work. And it's because of Martin Luther King, my work is now about being an able-bodied, cisgender, white person doing this work. So thank you, Martin Luther King, for being annoying. Now, Mother Teresa, also very annoying, and probably Barb in accounting. Mother Teresa is not the person you ask at the top of lunch, where do you want to go to lunch? Because she is busy. The reason why she's busy is that as a head heart person, she is trying to figure out if it was God's will to have this much pain and suffering on the planet, or if it was God's will for her to do something. She's busy. She don't care about Taco Tuesday. Eventually, Mother Teresa was able to learn that she could do something, and she began to build schools. She denied people a pain-free life because she thought that was God's will. Her debate of what to do is what made her work very powerful, but also limited her work. People were radically frustrated by working with her because you can't argue with someone's debate of their own God's will. When she died, seemingly of natural causes, it was a debate of whether or not to saint her, because I am not Catholic, but evidently rule number one is you have to be Catholic. And while debating God's will, she was a Catholic ebber and flower, trying to decide what was going on. Head heart people are capable of doing amazing things. I married one of these people. They have no regrets when they eventually make a decision. Lastly, we have Gandhi. Now, Gandhi is definitely how I show up in the world, and honey child, watch out. As a head action person, Gandhi literally thought his own individual hunger strike would overthrow an entire government. And karma, it kind of did. He was a first-generation college student who got accepted to law school by a clerical error and was such a terrible lawyer that lawyers asked him to stop lawyering. Gandhi also eventually realized that his work involved people that he would never meet. And when he stumbled into his heart part and found that sense of compassion, his work became significantly more powerful. When he realized other people would be impacted that he'd never even meet, that is slowly began to motivate his own work. Now, what's important to remember, you head action people in the room who are very excited there are handouts. What is important is to realize Gandhi was also assassinated by his own people, not an outsider. Don't be a Gandhi too often in a staff meeting, okay? Workplace violence is real, be careful. I invoke with you my very complicated, very frustrated social justice heroes, because they were very frustrating and very frustrated, and they still did good work. I'm going to ask you to go to the top of the hour that we were together and think back of the person that you mentioned in your head, the topics that you are hard no on, and I just want to invite you to give yourself some grace. Your life taught you to be this way, and this life may be asking a little bit more of you. And sometimes, every once in a while, maybe you can do it. To do the best you can with what you got some of the time means that you can take responsibility for how your heady part shows up. You can take responsibility for how your hearty part shows up. You can take responsibility for how your actiony part shows up. But you can also take responsibility for when they don't. Becoming conscious of what you are currently unconscious about is only your responsibility. It is no one else's responsibility.